What goes up must come down. Neo Cards and Comics here. Let's go ahead and talk about the most recent Goldin auctions from this past weekend. They were obviously loaded up with Marvel PMGs. I talked about this back when, 20 some days ago when the auction initially launched, that myself and a lot of others had concerns with the amount of inventory all ending at the same time, that this could cause some potential market cooling / decrease in prices, which was bound to happen. And that's exactly what played out. I am not going to sit here and run through each individual listing. I was on with Scandal Cards and Comics with a bunch of other Marvel content creators on Saturday night during the auctions. We kind of discussed them and they discussed them. I hopped on kind of late as things were running through. Card Boss has done a breakdown on it. GG Man's covered it. There's been a bunch of other IG posts and stuff talking about it. Extrinsic _collections is another really good IG follow that is breaking down a lot of the Marvel stuff over the recent months, as all this stuff has been going on as well. You can check out his stuff. He's done a good breakdown along with a bunch of other people's, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some people. So going down and reviewing the individual sales themselves, I don't believe is necessarily beneficial at this point. It's been covered to death. We're going to take a more macro approach. This to me was unsurprising. Though the entire Marvel market has leveled up, PMGs went an entirely different level. They went to the moon, essentially, and it was time for the spaceship to come back. As we've discussed in the past, all this stuff, whether it's comics, cards, vintage cards, Jordan 86 flares, whatever it is, something causes them to spike. They spike quick. It is unnatural, and the prices cannot maintain for very long, and then they come back down again and establish themselves at a new floor. And one thing I should say off the bat as well, let's not forget, I'm going to make two statements, and they can both be true. The Marvel card market is a sustainable marketplace that's going to be around for a very long time. And it is now considered, in my opinion, an actual, legit marketplace for collectibles. At the same time, this statement can also be true. PMGs were drastically overinflated. So it doesn't have to be, just because one thing went crazy doesn't mean the whole thing's fallen apart or anything crazy like that, if that makes sense. Both those statements can be true. The Marvel card market is a healthy marketplace. PMGs were drastically overinflated and needed to come back to earth. I've been talking about this for a while on multiple different live streams, multiple different videos, that these prices just were not sustainable. There's only so many buyers of these cards at these ultra high-end levels. And what also I think was happening was people were chasing sets. And an individual card would come up that multiple people needed. They would battle it out. One would win, one or two would lose, and then that would be less competition for the next card coming up. Was there some shenanigans going on behind the scenes? I have no idea. In any market, there is shenanigans going on behind the scenes. So it wouldn't be surprised if nonsense was happening behind the scenes with this stuff as well. What we haven't seen so far, and I have not dug into the numbers deeply, though the PMGs have come down, the rest of the Marvel stuff that leveled up has maintained fairly well. And essentially on the PMGs, what happened was the late January, early February, mid-February spike, when they got to their absolute highest, if you bought in that period, you're probably in the red today. They have come back down to what appears to be, and once again, I'm speaking very loosely here and at a very macro level, they've essentially kind of retreated back to late December, early January prices, which are still substantially higher than what they were even in the fall of 2021. They started getting hyped in the fall of 2021. That led in and through Christmas up until the beginning of the new year. Then they went next level, and now they are coming back down again. The key question is, a couple key questions. How far do they come down? Is this the new plateau? As we talk about, things spike up, they come back down again, and then they level off. Is this the level off point, or does it have more backsliding to come on it? I think a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I think things continue to slide. What will be telling is, and what we don't know yet, is what does the next Goldin auction look like? And is there just a general rush of people attempting to dump inventory now that prices are starting to slide? We've seen that happen in other collectible industries, and that's what causes the prices to spiral a little bit quicker. People see stuff starting to come down. They're like, oh, got to get out, if they bought it strictly for the flip. And then they flood the market with their stuff, and then that's even more inventory on the market. And we're already seeing the news cycle hit with, oh my God, this is down X percentage. Look at the blue Captain America on Instagram. This thing, bloodbath, whatever, crash. You know, I'm sure I'll probably have some clickbait thumbnail too. There's that news cycle that helps perpetuate this. So is this necessarily the re-level out point? I don't think we know for sure yet. Do I think PMGs, specifically PMGs, are crashing all the way back to what they were over the summer, where you get these things for a few $100s instead of a couple $1,000s in some cases? No. I think they level out somewhere in that December-ish price point. You know, I bought my red Spider-Gwen in January for around $1,100 to $1,200. Mine's a PSA 7. A Raw ended just yesterday or the day before, right around the same time as the Goldin Auctions, for basically that exact same price, $1,100 bucks. I probably could have sold it in the middle there somewhere for a profit, but that is not why I bought it. I did not buy the Gwens to flip. I bought the Gwens to put into my Spider-Gwen collection, along with my Edge of the Spider-Verse #2 and a bunch of other Gwen comics CGC slabs that I have. So generally speaking, that's kind of what's going on with PMGs. Once again, the next question is, what happens with things going forward? The other thing that we don't know, the second key question, what happens to everything else Marvel oriented? Does this trickle down? PMGs lifted the entire Marvel market up. Vibraniums, PSA 1090 MU, Marvel Masterpieces, Marvel Premiere, a bunch of other stuff, EPAC achievements, caught steam because the eyes got put on PMGs. People got priced out of PMGs, and then they went and scoured the web for everything else that potentially could have some value to it. Now, does that stuff still hold, or do we see a slight pullback on those items as well? Once again, I don't think we know yet. Time is going to tell that one. A lot of that stuff, and including the PMGs, are short printed or are numbered. There's not a lot of them out there in some cases. So I think that helps protect Marvel cards specifically from a massive pullback just because of the limited nature of the inventory. And a lot of these things are in collectors' hands and not going to see the light of day. So even though there might be 50 of a card, there may actually only be 20 some in the marketplace, depending on the character, the card, etc. Because the rest are locked away and they're going to the grave with someone, or, you know, break glass in case of extreme emergency type situation to sell that stuff. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I do believe, like I said at the beginning, that the Marvel market is still a completely viable market and will continue to do well for itself. It just got overinflated, like most things have in this market, but it is now on people's radar. There's a big release with Spider-Man Metal coming soon. I can tell you right now, Spider-Man Metal is going to be hyped to the moon. It is going to be hyped to the moon. I know I have 4 boxes on pre-order. I would potentially purchase more depending on the price point. You're already seeing it on the more modern sets. Marvel Annual, which just hit EPAC, which is Upper Deck's online exclusive version of being able to buy sealed product open and then stored on ComC. That just hit about a week ago and is already sold out. Cases sold out right prior to recording this video. X-Men metal cases lasted quite a bit longer, but you're seeing this extra interest in new releases of Marvel cards. Spider-Man metal boxes are near impossible to find. It just came out, which I haven't talked about this yet. I still need to listen to the actual podcast, but I've heard the highlights. The Marvel Card Collectors podcast with Ian and Norin had the guys from Upper Deck on, and they talked about that Spider-Man Metal is getting a retail release. There will be blaster boxes of Spider-Man Metal. Now, a lot of people are speculating that Spider-Man Metal release will inject some hype into the entire market as a whole. I'm not sure that happens. I'm really not. I think Spider-Man Metal is going to be an extremely hyped product. I think the prices are going to go crazy right at the beginning again, like we've seen with a lot of this other stuff, like we're seeing right now with WWE Prism, like we've seen with other more recent retail releases, or product releases rather, from other areas. I can see the exact same thing happening here. Sealed wax will probably perform quite well. Single prices will come out astronomically high right out of the gate, and then they will pull back and settle in, and then it'll just kind of be how things go. The thing with Marvel cards, and just Marvel in general, and comic books in general, on the comic book side, the movies and TV shows have great impact on how much prices swing up and down. We're seeing that a little bit on the Marvel cards. Moon Knight is starting to show evidence of having impact on Moon Knight prices, but there's still not enough there yet for me to go walk out on that limb and say, yes, this is going to follow the comic book spec where, you know, a trailer drops and all of a sudden the first appearance of that character spikes. We have not yet seen that on Marvel cards. And don't forget, there's no true first, I mean, there's like a first card, but it's very widely spread out on these characters on what their first card is. Some characters, it's sets from the 70s. Some it's the 80s, some it's the 90s, some it's the 2000s. It just depends. And also what card gets the hype. If a Spider-Gwen movie gets announced, for example, is it her PMG that's going to spike in price, or would it be her Vibranium? Vibranium is her first on-card appearance, I believe. Or is it the PMG that gets all the love because it's a PMG? Or is it some other in the weeds thing? Some Marvel Masterpiece thing? Some E-Pack achievement? Who knows? It's very personal choice on the artist, how the card looks, the set that it comes out of. It gets a little weird. Not weird, but it's very niche based, as opposed to basketball, where if Luka goes crazy, it's a Silver Prism PSA 10 that typically leads the charge and then kind of carries everything along with it. And that could be the case here. We just don't know what that original card could be. So long term, I'm still very bullish on Marvel cards in general. I did not buy a lot of PMGs during the Ultra Peak during February. In fact, I bought basically one, which was a Miles Morales off-flipping Steve Bronze, which is a low-end entry level, just to kind of have a Miles PMG, and I knew I wouldn't be able to afford any of the other ones. The only other two that I have are Gwen's. During the peak time, I was more looking at things that slipped through the cracks to try to find value there. You know, I bought the Scarlet Witch Rainbow, the Spider-Gwen Flarium, that sort of stuff. The stuff that had not caught fire yet, to kind of lock that stuff in while I could, in case it ever did catch fire. And I think a lot of people are still doing that today. So we'll see where things go from here. I am curious. I am interested. I think it's going to be very telling what the next big premier auction looks like, whether it's Goldin or PWCC if they get loaded up. Goldin seems to be the go-to spot for Marvel stuff. And while a lot of these cards did drastically underperform in some cases, or straight underperform, a lot of these really shouldn't have been on Goldin. There were some very lower end cards on here, some, you know, raw, or not raw, but like low grade SGC and PSA and even BGS of some lower tier characters in like bronze sets that sold for $400 to $500 to $600. In my opinion, and it's not my place to tell people where to sell their stuff, but in my opinion, I don't know that cards like that make sense on Goldin. I think that stuff does better on eBay. So as always, curious for your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. What do you think all this means? What are you taking away from the lackluster performance on this Goldin auction? Is this time to panic? Is this completely expected and normal? Do you think there will be more people looking to dump, or do you think people are now going to be looking to swoop in and potentially get some deals on these cards coming down in price? Because now this does have, I don't want to say it's like a boat anchor, but it's going to have an effect on the entire Marvel market as a whole. So that's all I have for you guys and girls today. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.